from the moment she opened her eyes to the world. Little Maria learned that life was not always kind, nor fair nor predictable. At only 8 years old, she had walked through struggles that many adults never face in an entire lifetime. Her earliest memories were not of toys, warm meals, or birthday candles, but of street corners, borrowed blankets, and the gentle but tired smile of her mother, who tried every day to shield her from the weight of the world. They had once lived in a small rental room, barely big enough for the two of them. But after her mother lost her housekeeping job, that fragile stability slipped through their hands. For months, they found shelter under bridges, in abandoned bus stops, or inside churches that kept their doors open at night. Through it all, Maria's mother would whisper, "God is watching over you, my girl. Sing when you feel scared. Sing when you feel lost, your voice is your gift." And so Maria sang. She sang to forget hunger. She sang to find warmth in cold nights. She sang to feel close to Jesus, whom her mother described as someone who never abandoned his children, no matter how dark the path became. People passing by would sometimes stop, drop a coin, and smile at the tiny girl, with the big voice that echoed hope in the middle of a restless city. But no one knew that her talent would one day carry her to a stage she had only seen in dreams she barely believed she deserved. On the morning of the audition, Maria woke up to the sound of car horns and vendors calling customers. She and her mother had spent the night behind a diner, where the manager occasionally allowed them to stay. Her mother had discovered the talent show auditions through an old newspaper someone had thrown away. "This is your chance," she whispered, brushing Maria's tangled hair with her fingers, because they had no comb. "Show them what God gave you." Maria was nervous, not because she doubted her voice, but because she feared she would be judged by the rough clothes she wore, the dirt under her nails, and the exhaustion she could not hide. Yet her mother's faith wrapped around her. Like an invisible blanket, they walked miles to reach the audition venue. Their steps slow, their energy stretched thin, but their hearts full of a fragile kind of hope. As they reached the giant building, Maria stared at the long line of contestants, in shiny clothes with makeup and fancy instruments. She lowered her head, feeling small and out of place. But her mother gently lifted her chin. "Remember," she said softly, "God does not choose the decorated. He chooses the deserving." Those words strengthened the little girl's trembling legs as they entered the hall filled with chatter, nervous contestants, and bright lights that made her eyes widen in awe. She didn't know if destiny would open its door that day, but she knew she had come too far to turn back. After hours of waiting, the producers finally called her name. Maria stepped forward, clutching the small wooden cross her mother had given her. The stage seemed enormous, almost endless, and for a moment, she felt swallowed by its magnitude. The judges sat like giants in the distance, their faces serious, unreadable. At the center of the panel was Simon Cowell, the man known worldwide for his sharp critiques and unshakable composure. Maria had seen clips of him on a TV, inside a shop window once. She remembered thinking he looked impossible to impress. Now she stood before him wearing a faded dress, her voice trembling as she introduced herself. When Simon asked where she lived, she hesitated. Her mother had told her not to be ashamed of her truth, but saying it aloud in front of cameras felt like ripping open a wound. Still, she gathered the courage and whispered, "We don't have a home." The audience fell silent. Simon leaned slightly forward, his expression softening for the first time. He simply nodded as if telling her, "You're safe here, go on." Maria exhaled slowly, looked at the ceiling as though searching for strength, and closed her eyes. The music began softly and instrumental, unlike the typical Yodel melodies heard in bright countryside performances, and she knew this was the moment she had been preparing for, her entire life, even without knowing it. When Maria opened her mouth to sing, the auditorium transformed. Her voice did not start strong. Instead, it carried a trembling softness, like a child gently knocking on heaven's door. But as the first yodel rang out, it came with a purity so stunning, so untouched by the world's cruelty, that everyone instinctively leaned forward. Her voice rose and fell with an angelic fluidity that seemed impossible for someone her age. Each note soared higher than the last, wrapping the room in a blend of innocence and power. It was not just a performance, it was a prayer plea, a conversation between a child and her creator, and when she shifted into the melodic yodel, dedicated to Jesus, the sound echoed with gratitude, desperation, longing, and faith all at once. People in the crowd began to cry, without understanding why. It was a voice that carried, every night Maria slept hungry. Every moment she felt forgotten. Every tear her mother hid behind a tired smile. And yet it also carried light, an unwavering belief that even in hardship, God was with her. Somewhere near the second verse, Simon removed his hand from his chin, slowly stunned, his eyes glistened with emotion. He tried to blink away. The auditorium had melted into silence, and the only thing that existed was this little girl pouring her soul into her song with a kind of courage that only suffering can build. As Maria reached the climax of her performance, her voice climbed into a breathtaking sequence of yodels that sounded like echoes from a distant mountaintop. It was raw, powerful, untouched by training, yet guided by something divine. She held a note so pure that even Simon, known for his stern demeanor, lowered his gaze as if overwhelmed. A few audience members placed their hands over their hearts. Others prayed silently. No one wanted the moment to end. And then, as the final note slipped from her lips, vibrating with emotion, the hall fell into a silence so deep it felt sacred. Maria kept her eyes closed for a second longer, afraid to look up, afraid to see disappointment, afraid that she had been foolish to believe she belonged there. But when she finally opened her eyes, she saw something she never expected. The entire audience had risen to their feet. It was not a typical standing ovation, filled with cheers and whistles. It was slow, reverent, emotional, like they were honoring something precious. Simon stood last, his eyes wet. For a man known for maintaining a tough exterior, that single gesture felt louder than applause. Maria covered her mouth with her small hands, tears streaming down her cheeks as she realized she had touched hearts in ways she never imagined. The applause grew louder, like crashing waves, filling the room with an overwhelming sense of pride and love directed at a child who had nothing but her talent and faith. Simon raised his hand to silence the crowd. He took a moment before speaking, his voice softer than usual, holding a depth of sincerity rarely seen on the show. "Maria," he said, pausing as if choosing his words with great care, "I don't know where you learned to sing like that. I don't know how someone your age carries so much emotion in your voice. But what I do know is that God gave you a gift, and today you gave it to us." Maria's tears fell harder. Her mother, standing backstage, clasped her hands over her heart, whispering thank you repeatedly under her breath. Simon continued, "There are performances we admire. There are performances we enjoy. And then there are performances we feel." Here he placed his hand over his heart. "And yours," I felt. The audience erupted into applause again. Maria stood frozen, overwhelmed. She had dreamed of singing for people, but she never imagined she would witness a room full of strangers, cheering for her as if she were someone extraordinary. She wiped her tears, still unsure what would happen next. Then, without warning, Simon looked at the golden buzzer in front of him. The crowd gasped, sensing what was about to happen. Maria felt her knees weaken as Simon placed his finger gently on the button and said, "This is for every child who thinks they are unseen. This is for your courage. This is for your miracle of a voice. And this is for your future." And with that, he pressed the golden buzzer. A burst of golden confetti exploded, from above raining down like blessings from heaven. The audience screamed, cheering with a joy so immense it felt unreal. Maria looked up as gold flakes fluttered onto her hair, her dress, her trembling hands. She cried harder, but these were different tears. Tears of disbelief, relief, and hope she had never known. Her mother rushed onto the stage, collapsing to her knees as she embraced her daughter tightly. Simon walked toward them, offering a gentle nod, a silent acknowledgement of their journey. He touched Maria's shoulder and said only one sentence, "You're not invisible anymore." That single line shattered whatever remained of her fear. For the first time in her life, Maria believed fully and completely that her voice had purpose. As the confetti settled and the lights dimmed, Maria stepped off the stage, with her mother still holding her hand. Backstage crew members congratulated them, some with tears still in their eyes. The world around her felt different. Not because she was suddenly famous, not because she had impressed a panel of judges, but because for the first time, she had been seen for who she truly was. Without judgment, her mother knelt in front of her, brushing confetti from her hair, whispering, "You did it, my angel." God was with you. Maria hugged her back tightly, whispering, "I sang for Jesus," and he listened. The golden buzzer did not just change her path. It rewrote her story. It opened doors they could barely imagine. Opportunities for shelter safety, education, and a future filled with possibilities instead of fear. But more than anything, it gave her the confidence to believe she was more than the circumstances she was born into. As they left the studio building hand in hand, Maria looked at the sky with a quiet smile, feeling the weight of the past lift slowly from her small shoulders. The world had finally heard her song, and it was only the beginning.